Hey you, yeah you who clicked on this video. Thanks for giving our channel a shot. And if you will, please do us the honor of watching the video all the way through. Appreciate it. Now onto the video. So, guys, we need to talk about the HBO series The Last of Us coming out next week. There's a lot going on and a lot of potential red flags that have been building up ever since this series was announced. And I've been really trying to give it the benefit of the doubt. Been trying to basically wait until the series came out, but I'm gonna be honest, if you're a fan of these games, these red flags are concerning, and I feel like an informed consumer is the best consumer, especially if you're a fan of this series and you need to know this stuff going in. So let's get into it. Top red flags of The Last of Us HBO series. Okay, so first and foremost, guys, I need to let you guys know, I am a big fan of the original The Last of Us. That means The Last of Us, the original game. And I have to make this known because The Last of Us as a series is kind of a mixed bag. I know that there are people that love part 1 and part 2 and think part 2 is better and whatever. This is my video, so we're going to talk about it from my perspective. And I know that a lot of fans share my feelings on the entire series. So what I'm talking about here is things that are basically stick out to me, whether it be media or from the trailers itself, or a lot of different things. And so we're going to get into it now. So the first thing, so there's a lot of horrible casting in this series, and I know a lot of people are, what's wrong with the casting? No. We're not gonna do that. Here's the thing, guys. When we're talking about casting an adaptation for something, it's very important that the cast at least resemble the source material. Well, why is that? Well, for a number of reasons. Remember, this isn't coming out of nowhere. If The Last of Us didn't have a built-in fan base, nobody would give a flying you know what. And because of this, when actors are miscast in these roles, it takes the core fan base and kind of really just makes them feel alienated. So the first person I'm going to talk about in what I feel is a miscasting is Joel Miller himself, being played by Pedro Pascal. Now, I know what this casting is about. You know what this casting is about. Nowhere was it because he was the best actor for the role, although Pedro Pascal, in my estimation, even though I don't agree with him on a lot of things, his acting ability is not within question. But what is in question is he the right fit for Joel? And the answer is no, absolutely not. Why do I say this? Well, let's look at the 5,000-pound gorilla in the room, elephant, whatever animal simile you'd like to take from this. But he is not Joel. Joel is a 6-foot-plus man. He is imposing. He is intimidating physically. He is a large man. And this is what has allowed him to survive in the world of The Last of Us. Pedro Pascal is not a large man. Last I checked, I think Pedro Pascal is, 5'10", maybe. He's too short and too small of a man. It works for The Mandalorian. I love him as Din Djarin in The Mandalorian, but he is far too small to play Joel Miller. In addition to that, and I know this is going to be a shock to a lot of you, so brace yourselves. You might want to be sitting down for this, but Joel is white, okay? Now, Pedro Pascal, I know you might be thrown off by the name or maybe the brown tan skin or the accent. Pedro Pascal is of Latin descent, and we know that this was done for a reason. Now, far be it from me to invoke the word ESG in this, but as we go through this casting and how this story is being portrayed, I'm pretty sure there's some ESG money in there. And if you don't know what ESG is, it basically stands for environmental, social, political governance, I do believe. And basically, it's a fancy term for basically saying that there's a bunch of rich people that pay movie studios and content creators to tick a bunch of boxes when they're making a piece of media. And basically, that circumvents the fans and the ratings so that these productions, even though fans might not enjoy them, they still make money from ESG dollars. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way. So, Pedro Pascal. So, number one, too small. Number two, not a redneck white man, can't even portray a redneck white man because he is of Latin descent. But apparently that doesn't matter anymore because we don't care about that. So that leads me to the next casting, which is Joel's brother, Tommy Miller, who will also be played by a person of Latino descent, Diego Luna. Also, good actor, but not Tommy. Now, obviously, you can see the examples of these as I'm going through. You'll be able to see them to the left and to my right. So you'll be able to see the comparisons between the look of these characters in the source material and what they're doing with the casting. So, next, Joel Miller's daughter, Sarah Miller. Yeah, just no. So again, I'm not, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you don't need to be surprised. You know I'm not for the race swapping, the hand-me-down heroes, any of the tokenized foolishness. And yet here we go, strike three for this show is the casting of Sarah Miller, who is, spoilers for those who haven't played The Last of Us, you've been warned and you may leave at any time, is Joel's daughter. And Sarah is a pivotal part of the motivations behind Joel doing what he's doing in this series, or in the franchise in general. So what we're looking at here is a blatant tokenization. Sarah, again, hope you're sitting down, is white. This child is obviously either just black or mixed race. It's hard to really tell, but they basically want you to believe that, I'm guessing that the wife is going to be black in the series. We don't really see her except I think in pictures in the game, but she's obviously has to be of some sort of melanated descent of some sort in order for this child to look the way that she looks, or who knows, they might finagle some other foolishness. Ain't no telling what Hollywood. So that's an issue. But you can probably get past those things. Those things, you know, you can move on. So then we have Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey. Now, this is weird because a few years ago, I really liked Bella Ramsey. I liked her in Game of Thrones as she played Lady Mormont. Like, I really enjoyed her. I enjoyed the presence that she brought to that role. I really enjoyed just everything about that character and her portrayal by Bella Ramsey. But since she's hit, I hate to say this, since she's hit puberty, I guess she's in that awkward phase of puberty. I'm not really sure, but oh my God, she does not look anything like the character she's supposed to be portraying. And, you know, and I don't want to comment on somebody's looks because I don't feel like that's appropriate, especially for a younger actress, but you know, come on now. So anyway, she doesn't really look the part, and I don't know if she can present the childlike innocence that Ellie has in the game that endears people to her despite her snarky attitude. The look about her makes people want to go out of their way to protect her, and Bella Ramsey, to me at least, doesn't really portray that well. Okay, so now that we've got it out of the bad casting and tokenization, so this is probably more concerning, and that's why it's further down on the list. So the cast was told not to play the game, and this was confirmed by Bella Ramsey herself. What in the actual fuck? So in any time that an actor is portraying a role, they do research, especially if they're playing an established character that they have source material for, whether that be a book or a previous film or historical documents or whatever. The point being is that this is something that you do, and the fact that the showrunner, Craig Mazin, and more importantly, Neil Druckman himself, itself is telling these people not to play the game so they have a better understanding of the character they're trying to portray just tells me that they don't plan to be faithful to the source material in any way, or portraying these characters in the way that millions, and I repeat this because it needs repeating, millions of fans have come to know them. Now, this is concerning because we've seen this done in the past. If you guys recall The Walking Dead, The Walking Dead was a series that, when going into it, people were excited about it. And this was from a comic book, a very well-selling comic book, but nowhere in the numbers that The Last of Us has sold. And people were upset after the first few episodes when a lot of the characters were portrayed either differently or completely just re-characterized. So much so that as time wore on and the stories wore on and they diverged more and more from the comic books, we see that the Walking Dead viewership declined sharply. It went from literally the most watched series in the world at the time to barely mentioned at all in the mid to later seasons. So, you know, we know that this is not a good idea. Don't do this. But, you know, now we move on to number 3. No respect for the canon and the source material. And this is so surprising, given that Neil Druckman has a direct hand in the creation of this adaptation. So between Neil Druckman and showrunner Craig Mazin, they have very little respect or regard for the source material. What am I talking about here? Well, one of Craig Mazin's quotes leading up to this release was talking about how death in a video game holds less weight than death in I guess he's trying to make a comparison to death on screen, but it comes off as just so tone deaf. I'm going to read you the quote. It says, when you're playing a section, you're killing people, and when you die, you get sent back to the checkpoint. All those people are back, moving around in the same way. Watching a person die, I think, ought to be much different than watching pixels die. So, this just completely shows a lack of understanding of what a video game is. Video games are the most immersive form of media that one can participate in, partly because you can participate in it. So, when you're watching a television series or watching a movie or reading a book, you are a bystander, you are passive, you are watching the events unfold, whether that be on screen or in your imagination. When you are playing a video game, you are an active participant in the acts taking place, making every single thing that happens, especially when meaningful characters that aren't side characters or extras die. It makes it that much more poignant and that much more, and it resonates that much more with the audience. That's why video games are so beloved. So for him to make this statement just shows, again, very little regard for the medium itself. And we're going to get into how this dovetails into the source material. That leads us into number 4, completely changing the origin of the virus. Now, again, this is a spoiler. If you have not played The Last of Us and you do not know what The Last of Us is about, I'm telling you, leave this video, play the game, watch the YouTube videos, watch a stream, I don't care, but come back after you know what's going on. Or if you don't care about spoilers, then enjoy. So, as you know from the original Last of Us game, the virus that is infecting people and making them crazy, and that has led to basically the end of, or close to the end of humanity as we know it, is a form of cordyceps. And cordyceps are basically a virus that infects the brain. It's been seen in ants, I do believe, in real life. And that's what made this such an interesting story, because it's not like some sort of fictional MacGuffin that doesn't exist in the real world that is causing this, but rather something that is actually happening. Cordyceps come from plant life. Now, what's weird about this is that in this adaptation, how the virus, or one of the mechanisms to how the virus spreads is, in the games at least, is spores that come out of basically infected hosts that have been infected for a long time. And these infected hosts usually live in dark, damp places where these spores can populate. And so when you go into really dark, damp places in the game, you have to wear a mask because that's where the spores are the most lethal and can infect you. But in sunlight and places like that, they're left inert and really can't do the damage to the body and the brain that they would normally be able to do in those damp circumstances. And these are being removed. And I have my theories on this. But first, let's read the quote for this. And this is also, again, coming from Craig Mazin, who's being allowed to do a lot more talking than I think he should, especially if you want fans of the series to be excited. So he says, for instance, little things like spores in the game. There are these where you encounter spores and you need to put a gas mask on in the world that we're creating. If we put spores in the air, it would be pretty clear that they would spread around everywhere and everybody would have to wear a mask all the time, and probably everybody would be completely infected by that point. So we challenged ourselves to come up with an interesting new way for the fungus to spread mostly. But mostly I think we just connected with the soul and spirit of the game. Oh boy. So again, this is just stupid and shows a lack of understanding of the source material. Because again, the spores aren't just everywhere infecting people. They only really work in damp, dark places. Nobody's running around with a gas mask in the game or with a filtered mask in the game all the time. They're wearing the mask in these places where these spores can actually be dangerous, just like bacteria in the real world. Bacteria need certain circumstances. If we talk about the virus of unknown Eastern Asian origin, then, that virus had conditions. There were rules. The virus could only live on surfaces for certain amounts of time. When exposed to extreme heat or cold, the virus couldn't populate. Same with The Last of Us. And this is a problem because whether this person realizes it, I know Neil Druckman knows this, I know it. Without the spores, they are basically handicapping themselves story-wise because there are certain story beats that happen as a direct result of the spores being a thing. And what's really makes this bad is that if you really think about it, all they're really doing with this is making it basically just a basic bitch zombie show, because that's what made The Last of Us different from other zombie fiction, was the science and the lore behind it, which will become apparent to anybody that's played the game. Also, instead of these spores, now they have this thing called tendrils, and basically they're talking about it being some sort of hive mind between the infected, which also takes away from the random nature of viral infection and makes this kind of more of a deliberate type thing, which I really don't like where that's going, because again, you are going to have to fundamentally change how the story is told in order to fit these changes into the story. And I'm just not for this. And I really have a feeling that this was changed not because they were trying to challenge themselves, but because Pedro Pascal, after his experience with the Mandalorian and the whole mask thing, him having to take the helmet on, put it on, keep the helmet on, and that was a big thing for him. I feel like he has an aversion to wearing masks now, especially on camera, and I feel like this was done to accommodate him, but that's just me speculating. So now let's go to number 5, the last part of this. This story has already been done and done better on screen, and you probably have no idea what I'm talking about, so I'm gonna recommend you to watch something. It's a movie, you can watch it free on YouTube and Tubi if you like, if you don't mind ads, that is. And that is The Girl with All the Gifts. The Girl with All the Gifts is the Last of Us story without all the BS and told in a way that it could easily fit into the world of The Last of Us. And this movie came out years and years ago. And I guarantee you, if you really want a good Last of Us style experience, watch this movie if these red flags are a problem for you. Me personally, I'm gonna give the show at least 3 episodes. if by 3 episodes I can't get into it, then I'm probably going to drop it. Now, another thing that I failed to mention in the woke casting portion of this and the ESG stuff is they are doing something to 2 characters, 2 brothers, in fact, and you know who I'm talking about if you've played the game. They're doing something to these characters that, again, just reeks of ESG and ticking boxes. In particular, they're giving the younger brother a handicap that is just completely unnecessary and just reeks of let's tick this box, that box, and every box. But again, guys, these are just the red flags that I saw going into the hype for The Last of Us, and I'm honestly a lot less optimistic and a lot more trepidatious than I was maybe about 2 weeks ago. And so I'm gonna be going into this very skeptical, but let me know what you guys think. If you think these red flags are not a problem for you, even if you are a fan of the games, or if you believe that, hey, these are some causes for concern. Sound off in the comment section below. We'll see you on the next one. 8-Bit Heroes out. Peace.
If you'd like to get a shout out on the channel, then hit that like button, maybe share it with a couple of friends, and do us the biggest honor of all, and subscribe to the channel so you can join the 8-Bit Heroes family. And while you're at it, hit that bell icon so you can be notified when our new videos come out.